All right. Hello, welcome.
Ooh, we're live.
LinkedIn Live. Welcome to another week of Financial Clarity Live. I want to welcome my guest, Phil Matthey, business partner at Sustain CFO, and Michael Oberther with ArcLedge. Thank you for showing up today and playing the role of the controller, which, you play that Monday through Friday. So we've got an exciting show today. We're going to be diving into finance operations, helping you out there to team up and stop the financial finger pointing. So we found way too many businesses that have their financial team fighting with each other instead of closing the books on a consistent basis. And we're going to tell you how to dive right in and take care of at least going into the new year with a new plan. But before we do that, we want to have a little fun. So we're framing this as a virtual meetup at a digital bar somewhere in the world. And let's see what our archetypes are interested in at the bar. So I'm going to turn to our first guest, Mike. What do you order at the drink after work of a long day of doing controllership work?
Yeah, this is easy. Old fashioned, as is. I don't even request a special kind of bourbon. I just want that bartender to do what they do best and make a delicious one. That's it.
Okay. Fantastic. And Phil, I'm buying. So what are you drinking?
Oh, and I guess the best single malt Scotch whiskey you got laying around, pal.
All right.
I do like Mike's answer. Old fashions are always good.
So 4 roses.
It's holiday week. I got a payroll to run as the business owner, and I'm sweating it. So I'm gonna be soberly curious today. And I'm going to go with I don't know, some sort of like spritzer to remind me of, non-alcoholic, of course, because I'm stressing out on payroll. But all right, let's jump into a couple things just to get to know our team here. So, Michael, what book could you recommend? And go ahead while you're at it and tell us something on TV that, you're flipping to when you get the remote in your hand.
Yeah, so I suspect that our audience is largely Gen X. I would say that you should definitely read Ready Player One. It was a terrific audiobook, a terrible movie. But if you're from the 80s at all, awesome. As far as TV goes, this season, I am really focused on absorbing as much Hallmark as I can possibly get, mixed with UFC Fight Pass, a little bit of jiu-jitsu action when I get sick of puppies and kittens being saved. That's what I'm up to.
Thank you for that. That's wonderful. So I'm going to save you for last because you're the strategist in the room. But I am reading Main Street Millionaire by Cody Sanchez, talking about bringing the ownership back to our nation. And on TV, getting down to my favorite sport. This is the silly season in golf. So we're going to be watching the parent-child event at PNC with Tiger and his kid. And then go and actually playing in something similar with my son at Pinehurst next week. So I'm pumped for that. Phil, bring us home on the scene. What are you reading? What are you watching?
Yes, I guess when I got a preview of this question, I just thought of this because I'm getting this book for my niece. She's getting to the age where it makes sense to read The Richest Man in Babylon. That's always a good one for anyone if they've got it's for anybody to read, but if you haven't read it, but particularly for someone in that, 16, 17, 20-year-old range, I think it does a great job of combining finances and, a little bit of storytelling and kind of pulling it all together. I don't watch much TV, but the wind down religiously most nights is Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I need something a little completely ridiculous to offset the, reality that goes on most days.
There we go. Wonderful. All right, let's jump into our team. So I'm playing the role in this conversation of the business owner. Should be the strategic leader, should be the financial overseer, should be the risk manager. Many times that those three roles are left to the wayside because I'm in running the business, dealing with the day in, day out, and honestly getting stuck in the weeds. So what this conversation is about is elevating the business owner up a notch by having a strategic partner in a CFO and a control partner in a controller that allow me to receive my financials and instead of beg for them and review them in advance of strategizing on them. And so that is the business owner that we're going to be talking about today is the one in the forward-looking, futuristic version of myself that's not stressed out in this holiday season. So let's talk to Michael about the controller's domain. So, other than the boring stuff, what is your role, and how do you play it best?
Yeah. Excuse me. Our role is very critical, I would say. Oftentimes it's foundational, but people come to me and they need to know what's happening in their business. Oftentimes their bookkeeper and controller aspect of their business is poorly organized. There's no structure, there's no timing, there's no reporting that's actually helping them make decisions. And from a basic perspective, that's our goal. And I say basic because as businesses grow and become more complicated, that structure and that timing and that calendar of events grows more complicated with it. But that's the role of the controller, is to observe the business, be at least in on the strategic conversation, and adjust that system to aggregate the data that business leaders need so they don't need to be stressed out about what's happening in their business.
Beautiful. And we went with Michael first because if he doesn't do his job, if we don't have that role in place, then the CFO's position is almost useless, but not well played. So Phil, talk to us about the CFO's strategic role when you have great controllership and bookkeeping in place.
Yeah, so I think one of the key objectives is, as Michael alluded to, getting the basic blocking and tackling efficiently done accurately so that we have as much time to make strategic decisions and then implement them, right? So it's I think a function of however fast that can happen. In an accurate way just enables more runway for us on the strategic side to analyze that information and then make decisions based on what it's telling us. And that's really what the name of the game is to compare what's happening to what we thought was going to happen, and then using that real-time data to inform our assumptions going forward around what does that information need to inform our assumptions from a forecasting and a strategic perspective, right? It all kind of goes hand in hand. If you're doing it right, you get this real-time view of what's happened versus what we thought was going to happen, and then how does that change what we thought was going to happen last time we talked about this.
Excellent. And I see, Michael, you're nodding your head, and we've seen, this is our view of it, somewhat simplistic, but every one of these roles is played, right? Whether it's played by the same person spinning their hat around, or not played at all, and therefore there's a giant gap in the process. It is played. So I guess, Michael, as you think about these roles and you're the foundation that this pyramid is built off of, what do you see most common is the confusion that people have about where the controller line is and where the bookkeeper line is? How do you differentiate that in a simple way?
Yeah, I always think of it in terms of what direction I'm looking in. Bookkeepers are historians, right? They're going to tell you what happened. This happened last week, last month, last quarter, whatever. Everything that is a forward-looking concern, which could be as simple as, are we going to make payroll next week? What bills are coming up, right? That's at the beginning of the controller seat going forward. So that's where I draw the line is, are we looking backward? Or are we looking forward?
Okay, awesome. Well, it's the 18th of the month. So if we were in our live situation, we'd probably be at the point now where we'd close the books and we're looking forward. So let's talk about the process, and we'll start at the beginning of the month. So let's just pretend that it's December 1st. And Phil, you wanted us to look at it in this view with this month end close process and kind of looking at it from a whole perspective, I guess. Like, how do you turn the controller's reconciled data into actionable insights for the business owner?
Well, I think, you alluded to, that's why this is first, is because this process needs to happen, be complete before you can do any of that stuff, right? You need to close the books, know what's done, have all of the dust settled. To Michael's point, then you can start looking at your open AR and AP and start having those strategic conversations. And, but this needs to happen before you can do anything else really from, finalizing that source of truth.
And, obviously there's a lot of like chronological steps, we can get into that in a later session, but, Michael, what is the one that you're seeing maybe gets skipped or overlooked most often when folks do it themselves? Don't bring in professionals like yourself and your team.
They focus mainly on billing their clients and collecting money, right? Which is fine. That's very, very important. what we often find when we come in and we're the first bookkeeper or we're the first real bookkeeper that they've had, they're neglecting reconciliation. They're neglecting transactions that they're not sure what to deal with. So you go into their general ledger and there's just transactions for the last few years that just have not been managed. So for us, it is almost always the case that there's cleanup that needs to happen, which is fine because it's an excellent opportunity, right? The reports that Phil is going to use to help guide strategic decisions really are fueled from the design of the chart of accounts, right? So sometimes we're coming in, we're just looking at the core basics, talking to that business owner and saying, hey, does this chart represent you? Or is it the QuickBooks default chart, which is not always the best? I'm going to add one thing here because we're talking about a situation where the business owner is bringing in like real accounting leadership. And in a case where there's a bookkeeper, controller, and a CFO, there really needs to be a meeting of the minds. And we, as bookkeeper controller, we're serving the business owner's ultimate goal, but we are also working very directly with the CFO's vision of strategy and the data that that person sees being critical for their work. So we're designing the system around the leadership that that CFO is providing. So that's a little beyond the question you asked, but that meeting of the minds is an area we see missed constantly.
You nailed the big picture. And if you don't start with the big picture, you'll probably get it wrong when you start taking the little steps that move this forward, and the owner review being the end of it, but also the point of it, right? It's to inform, and in order for that owner, in this case, myself, to make decisions that are based on information, not hunches, and not off of fear. Okay, now we're back at the beginning of the month. As we look at right out of the gates, if a process is set up right, what happens on the first, second business day of the month? Looking at you, Michael.
Oh, sorry. In the beginning of the month, we're dealing with two things. It's a new month and we're closing out the previous period. So which do you want me to comment on?
Well, I guess how do you juggle those? Like what does that look like? Frame it out however you like.
Very well. So from our perspective at ArcLedge, our goal is to build a calendar of events, right? Some businesses are very, very simple. We have a single phone call. We do a trial close without them. We get on the call. We go through some miscellaneous transactions, and we're off and running. Many of our clients are very complicated. So we have everything calendared out, right? When are we doing bill pay? When is payroll happening? Are we meeting with the bank? When are investors concerned about reports? What about a board of directors? Maybe you have a factor involved, or yes, you have a CFO and they're expecting certain things. So we have a calendar of events where we're able to batch our work and kind of plan our work and be very efficient so that we can easily juggle the close process. And we've, at this point at the first of the month, we are probably having that close call with our clients where we've done the trial close and we're going over miscellaneous transactions, closing out the book so that we can wrap everything up for the month. And then we're in that same call looking at hot topics coming up. Hey, payroll's going next Wednesday. How are we looking at whatever those questions are that are going to make all of that happen? We're preparing for those next big events. That's what we're doing on day one.
All right. And how about Phil, from the CFO's perspective, what does the beginning of the month look like? What should a CFO role be doing in that first 10 days out of the gates?
Yeah. So, picking up on what Michael was saying is, we're also very focused on, how the dust is going to settle relative to what our expectations were. And I say this to clients all the time. It's a lot easier to point out things that don't look right if you know what your expectation is for what they should be looking like. So what we're doing during the beginning of the month is, monitoring this process from our lens, kind of comparing what's happening real time to what we were expecting to happen in the various stages, right? A lot of times you'll close revenue, then you'll close your gross margin, and start working on various areas of OpEx. So we're, to Michael's point, kind of monitoring this kind of process, knowing when things are happening, and then providing our perspective, another lens, another set of eyes to maintain accuracy and bring a little bit of a different perspective, and kind of ask a little bit of different questions, make sure that we really understand what's going on from a retrospective perspective, right? Kind of where are our blind spots, and trying to figure out where those are.
Absolutely. And I think it's a busy period of the month, both kind of the beginning, the middle, and to an extent the end, depending on how complex the process is. But the business owner doesn't take a day off in their head. And this is a great time of the month to having just got the close from last month, maybe in the past 10 days, reviewed the key metrics, to go ahead and make some small adjustments, incremental experiments on how to keep the metrics going in the right direction. So I think from the business owner's perspective, that dashboard and having that in one place that they can go and try to move the needle for the first 2-3 weeks of the month while these other block and tackle components are delivered and the reporting comes out the other side, that's really important. So mid-month activities, we don't have to differentiate this too much from the beginning to the end, but I guess if there's one thing, Michael, looking at you, that mid-month needs to go right. It's got to go right in order for the month to overall be a win. What is that from the controller perspective?
I mean, mid-month it's client billing and it's bill pay, right? And it's tracking, really, it's leading into cash flow management at that point. What invoices, what was our billing? Who's going to pay? Who's not going to pay? What's our AR look like? And, what bills do we need to pay? How are we looking on cash right now? And then maybe if we have to juggle who we're paying and when based on cash flow, cash that's available, right? So it's really always that razor's edge balance. That's what the mid-month is really focused on for a lot of our clients.
Thank you for the honesty, right? That's a real conversation. Just if you're out there and you're a vendor and you're wondering why you don't get paid, it's because somebody made a decision not to pay you yet. They'll probably will pay you. It's their intentions. That's why they signed a contract. But if you didn't notice, everybody is on some form of credit. That's kind of how the world goes around. So, Phil, speaking of that, and then kind of pulling up to a higher level of the investor relations preparation, let's pretend that this is a month where we have a board meeting. Let's say we got to nail this because it's on the 23rd and the next day is Christmas Eve. What are you doing in the middle of the month to make sure that board meeting goes right and the investor relations component is covered?
Yeah, I mean, even more broadly speaking, right? It's this concept that, right, working with the owner and the controllership to communicate what's happened to the various stakeholders in the business so that they understand, right? Deriving that level of ownership and, making sure everyone's on the same page. So we're communicating, that information. And then at the same time, getting that team together to recast the forecast, discuss what comes out of, that information that we gleaned, right? So we do the first part of the month, right? That sets us up for this conversation. And if we're in that process month in and month out, then whether there's a board meeting or whatever it is in any given month, it's not some fire drill that we have to do anything special to prepare for, but we're always in a rhythm where we've got the necessary reporting, we've got whatever decks we need, get the team rallied around that information, and we're able to go in there, deliver a presentation to whoever the investor may be and knock it out of the park every time, because it's not a scramble every time something pops on the calendar, but it's just a function of the month in, month out, how we operate with our clients.
I love that professional lens, right? If you're doing it right, you don't have to scramble the jets. It's just part of the process. And every request doesn't need to be a fire drill. So, all right. So these are just kind of some key deliverables at each stage. We'll pause it there for a second. But as we, look at, okay, what are some folks doing on this call? What are they looking for? Their team is pointing at each other. Their team is arguing. They are coming to their strategy meeting without the information in hand. Why is this happening? I guess, Phil, can you share an example of how communication breakdowns in a real client, but you don't have to mention their name, led to a missed opportunity, and then how was it resolved?
Yeah, I think communication is the name of the game here, right? And if it's just the three of us being the only ones who ever talk about the finances as the business owner and controller, the CFO, we're not doing our job in the sense that unless it's we're the only three in the company, right? It's that lack of understanding around who's responsible for certain budgets, right? If they don't know where they're at any given point in time and they're making decisions, we don't sit here and talk about that with the owner of that decision making. Then the year goes by and that's how the hell did you spend twice as much as we thought you were going to? It's like, well, nobody ever told me what I was supposed to spend. So we see that type of stuff all the time where the data exists and it lives somewhere, but it's oftentimes stuck in the key decision makers' heads, but not necessarily disseminated around and down to their direct reports, right? And I think that's where we like to engage with our clients at that level where they can't wear all the hats and they need to have someone who can help them monitor, but not be the ultimate decision maker every single time, and be the ultimate point of failure, which is just never gonna work.
So Phil, you mentioned something really great, which is that a lot of times people, especially the business owners, I've played this role myself, I've experienced it myself, where I realize, usually it's late at night, that there is something that I think I've communicated because I've thought about it so many times in my own head, but I've actually never articulated it to my team. And so that's a data silo. But I'm looking at you, Michael. How do you combat actual data silos, and within organizations to ensure a smoother financial operation?
It starts day one during our kickoff call. A lot of our relationships with our clients are collaborative, right? Which means not that we're working directly with the business owner. That's fairly standard for us. What I mean is that that business has someone in their business or multiple people in that business that play an accounting role. So it could be someone in project management, it could be someone in sales, it could be an admin or office manager. Somebody has data that we need. They have their own process that they're following. So in our kickoff calls and our early stage relationship, it is defining very clearly the work split between ArcLedge, the owner, the CFO, the people in the business that are responsible for any accounting related actions that may lead to bill pay, client billing, payroll, what have you. So we're defining that day one. Once it's defined, we're actually building that into our calendar of events. So if we know, we'll just go back to payroll, or if we know payroll goes out every other Wednesday, cool. Who collects those hours? Oh, it's the office manager. That's fantastic. So we have a relationship with that office manager that says, hey, we need the hours for the previous week by Monday afternoon so we can get those to the payroll company so it can be drafted on Wednesday morning. And we're taking responsibility for connecting with that person. And it may not be smooth right away, but over the course of even just a couple weeks, that person in the business gets very used to delivering that data, and you start to see a process form and it becomes very smooth, actually very quickly. They just need someone from the outside to look at it and be like, hey, here's the best way to get it done. That's how we do it.
Great answer. And you kept it, focused. And this is the production line for those folks out there that are listening. They're like, oh, like each one of these is just a step, but it actually has to get done by the time it has to, because these in order to hit a close of the 15th business day or 10th business day, you can't drop the ball a bunch of times. It's like a good basketball team or something like that. It's a lot of passing, and everybody's knowing where they're headed, and they have to be there in time, and it's just in time to a nature. But if not, then you get to this delayed reporting. I guess, Phil, we're going to flip it around. If that was what a really great process looks like, don't fear monger me, please. But what's it going to cost the owners out there that are listening? They're thinking, I probably don't need this yet. I'm only doing 2 to 5 million. My investors aren't knocking down the door for reports. What's it going to cost me if I don't do this in 2025?
I thought you were going to ask me the other question. What does it cost to get all this stuff cleaned up in a situation when it doesn't look like
that one depends. That one depends.
That's always a touchy question to answer. But I think it's the way I like to frame it is that if you're not doing this right, you're flying blind in a lot of different ways. And if you're not in a good process and everything just feels like this constant fluid thing, like you're not going to feel good about where you are at any given time, right? You're going to be constantly looking in the rearview mirror when what you should really be doing is making decisions about what's coming out of the windshield, right? So we use that analogy all the time, but that's the equivalency of driving the car, looking in the rearview mirror with running your business without knowing where those key metrics stand, right? Okay. I think what Michael was pointing into earlier is, this is a process, right? It's like, the best in class across any industry, right? It's like, nobody's making this up from scratch. There's certain things that need to happen. We talk about reconciliations and discipline around transactions and AP and AR, right? There's a ubiquitous nature to this. So it's while there's always going to be the corner cases and, building the process. And I came from a world where, these big mega corporations, so the processes were always very much there. And it was just kind of playing into them where, as Michael alluded to, with a lot of our clients, it's developing these habits and develop muscles that never existed and trying to strengthen them so that things can happen on a regular basis. And the books get closed, and all of a sudden you're feeling like you're living in this world where there's some level of accuracy in what you're doing and your record keeping, where if you're not closing the books on time, and if there is, you don't even know what that term means. There's a good, we always got that feeling in the back of your head, like, is this right? You're kind of constantly questioning accuracy. And if you're in that world, then you're never going to be confident in the decisions you're making.
All right. So I heard confidence. I heard clarity, and ultimately the ability to move forward, right? They say a lot of times in business, it's not so much the decisions that you make that are wrong. It's the ones that you don't make that will end up costing you, like, ultimately. So I think that's what this is all about. So we just talked about best practices, in juxtaposed against not great practices. I guess want to get both of your takes. It's a big world and it's changing fast. Automation is coming. How do you view, Michael, automation? I guess we can use the term AI in this case. And how do you see that changing in 25? I'm not asking for any like genie predictions, but how do you see that changing, and how are you guys using automation currently?
So that's a really good question. Let's address automation currently, because this is actually a current issue that is a big challenge for a lot of people. QuickBooks Online, Xero, NetSuite, whatever, they have many different apps you can connect to them for different reasons. And some of those apps have a great data feed and you have control over that data, and it's terrific. Others do not. There is no control, and it just pumps data into your general ledger, which creates a massive mess. The way that we work with it, especially if it's a new connection we're unfamiliar with, is actually to do a test run. A new app, we'll implement it, we'll set it up, we'll run a very limited amount of data, see how it comes out on the other end. If it's clean and good, great, we're good to go. We're going to run that automation. If the client chooses to use an app that has dirty data, we will use a less automated step. We can export that data to a third party, manipulate the data, then get it into the general ledger, right? So we're very cautious, though we are very tech forward. We don't want to create hours of extra work because that just causes the client to have to pay money. As far as AI goes, it's already in the mix to a degree, but there is a lot of development that still needs to happen for it to be fully trustworthy. But I am constantly reached out to on LinkedIn by AI developers creating apps that are going to change my accounting life. It's coming. I don't know if it's coming in 25, but I would be shocked if we aren't fully or at least partially AI driven by 27. I know that's not quite the answer you asked.
No,
but
I'm with you. You're either leaning in or you're going to get knocked out.
We're leaning in, but we're
no, I know you are. I'm saying our audience out there, and I would
Yeah.
not suggest, if you don't know what all these terms mean, I wouldn't suggest you go build an AI agent and have it put all your stuff away. You'll learn what the problem is with that when you get to the IRS. But no, I really like the way that you frame that up. And if those folks out there are listening to this and going, we probably need somebody to evaluate our process on that, I guess, can you tell us a little bit more about that process within ArcLedge and what you guys do? Some folks maybe are not familiar.
Just our general approach.
General process. Like, what's it like to get onboarded?
Yeah. So I'm your first point of contact. So if you're curious about our bookkeeping or literally any kind of bookkeeping related conversation, I have a conversation coming up with an attorney. He wants to know what the options are in terms of models in the world for bookkeeping. Cool. I'm happy to have that conversation. If you choose to work with us, day one, you're meeting with your team of 2 bookkeepers, right? These are the people that are going to onboard you. They are your lifeline support for all bookkeeper and controller related issues. Here at ArcLedge, we do hire mature accountants. So everyone's got a degree in accounting or finance. Our associates have at least 6 years. Our managers have at least 10. So they are awesome. They're also supported by maybe 65 other W-2 US-based accountants that are on our team. So we have a massive frame of reference. So no matter what you have coming down the pipe in your business, we have the knowledge and know-how to streamline that process and make it efficient. We're extremely flexible in the way that we work with our clients. So sometimes, I'll take you through the life cycle very quickly. Rudimentary reconciliation and close on a monthly basis. We grow all the way up to full controllership, but that business eventually hires a full-time controller, no problem. We'll onboard that controller. We'll get busted down to bookkeeper again. We'll maybe pay some bills, but our clients keep us on because we can jump right back into that full-time controller seat if that controller ever leaves. So that's the life cycle of our businesses.
I love that you touched on that, which is the nature of fractional is not just that you're paying for on demand, it's that your scalability is on demand. And, we operate a similar model at Sustain CFO. Our onboarding starts with your financial North Star. We figure that out within 7 days. We build your first forecast within the first month. We iterate on that with the close process we've talked about, months 2, months 3. And by 90 days in, you have that financial clarity and confidence to move forward. Or we're not the team and, we're not going to charge you anymore to keep rocking and rolling. But this has been a really awesome conversation. we got some Q&A. We're not going to have time for it in the live session, so I'm going to follow up and do some of that in some posts. But I just want to thank our guest, Michael, and my partner, Phil, for jumping on, and make sure to connect with them on LinkedIn. We got a newsletter coming out, Finance in 5, in the new year, and we've got a new full season of topics and live guests. So for everyone out there listening, thank you for joining us at Financial Clarity Live. And we're going to see you in the new year on Wednesdays around 3. So thanks so much, Michael, Phil. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.